Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Podcast Daily. It's here. Spring practice starts tomorrow. Oh, what a delightful thing to say. We have real football to talk about. We actually got some ball to talk about in Indianapolis last week. That's Jeremy Birmingham and Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. It was an interesting 4 days in Indianapolis. A nice little appetizer to get us ready for spring ball on Tuesday. A nice mix of some Buckeyes talking about their replacements, some of them choosing to work out, a lot of insight into the process, and then a new addition into the Combine lexicon. No longer, Bill, you missed on this one. Well, we have to just worry about who's heard from the Jets, because from now and forevermore, we will just say, "Have you met Burrow?"
It was weird. It was super weird. You know what I think is awesome, though, for Ohio State is that on Thursday and Friday, there was all this conversation about what's wrong with these guys. Why aren't they running? Why aren't they doing this? And a lot of people wondering, like, oh, this looks bad for the Buckeyes. And then Saturday and Sunday, all people are talking about is C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith-Njigba and how good they were. And I want to just grab people and say, did you never watch them play? They were always this good. And so I think it was a very productive final 2 days for Ohio State, both with Stroud and Njigba, and then the performance by Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones on Sunday ended up being a pretty good weekend for Ohio State after some question marks about why Zach Harrison isn't running or why Ronnie Hickman isn't or why Cam Brown isn't. And the stars shone brightest for Ohio State on the weekend. So that was big for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, we learned that DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler are the two fastest Buckeyes. So shout out to those guys.
Wow. Who would have guessed? Luke Whippler was not a big fan of the 40. I think that was probably my favorite stint of the interview sessions, was not finding out that Luke Whippler once did stand-up comedy 2 open nights in high school, which I think we should all count ourselves lucky that this Ohio State football beat didn't know about that for the last 3 years. But then he also showed some of that improv by riffing on the value of a center going out and running 40 yards in a straight line.
Is he a prop comic?
I don't think he's got any Carrot Top in him. Although
he's smashing some fruit,
just carrying around. Yeah, that's how he came up with the recipe for lemon perfect.
But yes, he sure did. Bill, did you have any regrets that you missed out on the Combine experience?
No, my biggest regret is that I sat here and watched most of it on my television when I probably didn't have to. No, I don't.
You didn't have to.
Yeah. I don't know why I did that. Obviously, I wanted to watch CJ throw. I wanted to see how Jackson looked, and all that was awesome. They had really good days. Aside from that, it seemed relatively uninteresting. Although I thought some of the stuff you guys got from the OSU guys about this current team were interesting. But the Combine itself seems to mean less and less every year.
I mean, that was something we talked about a little bit on Snap Judgments on Friday. Is this process now becoming sort of irrelevant, and is the Combine only really worthwhile for NFL teams to get medical information and to do interviews, and that the on-field stuff is sort of pointless?
Yes.
That does seem
all
to be
right.
the case.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Well, especially because they have other opportunities, and you go to the pro day, you could also be brought in on visits. Now you're not going to go, I think, run a straight line 40 if the Rams want Cam Brown to go on a visit. Like, I don't think that's when you do those kinds of workouts. But also, as Luke Whippler delightfully pointed out, some of these drills are irrelevant for offensive linemen, or they don't have carryover from position to position. And it's just not, it's real football. And every single one of their games now is also on television. So it's not like when the Combine started and scouts like, well, I'd like to see what these guys can do physically. We've never heard of them before. Every single player there already had multiple years, multiple games of filmed available at the drop of a hat for all these people. The scouts are, believe it or not, they don't have to travel by train, so they can fly in and meet with these teams and watch them play games in person if they need to. So it does seem to be a little outdated, and it doesn't even really work as a made-for-television event if not everybody is participating in it.
I get the desire to quantify athleticism, and I do think that is valuable. I think I would feel much differently about the combine if they didn't stretch it over an entire week. Like, they can do everything they did in Lucas Oil Stadium in like a day and a half, and then just like get everybody out of there. I don't care if it's on TV. I don't need to see guys run on television, but I understand like NFL teams wanting to get that information, but they drag it out so much because they're trying to make it a TV show that by the end of the week, it just feels tedious and unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, the entire like NFL media sphere was packing up and leaving on Saturday morning, and we were in the interview room, and I'm like, why is everyone breaking stuff down? I'm like, there's another day and a half of this, and if the people who are being paid by the NFL to promote this stuff are like, all right, screw it, we're out of here. I'm like, why are we still here? This is way too long. Like it.
Yep.
I get it if you want to have times, you know, if you have all of the positions do stuff in a 10-hour window on one day, right? And then you have 2 days of interviews and meetings, then that's fine. Like, you don't need to have these testing sessions and asking guys if they'd rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck. I mean, it's just stupid stuff. Like, I'm like, what are we doing? Why are you asking guys this stuff? Whatever.
Well, how would you answer that, bro?
I would definitely rather fight 100 horse-sized ducks than one duck-sized horse. Because I think so. I think I'd be able to kick them. You know, like all they'd be able to do is kick me in the shins. So I could probably like, because I mean, I'd be able to.
You
kick
just
them.
flipped it.
You just said it the wrong way.
Whatever.
You
know what the question was.
Don't get to change the rules.
I'm not part of the NFL's testing committee. What I am a part of is the common sense committee. And if I had to choose between one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses, I would prefer to fight 100 duck-sized horses because I could kick them, and all they could do was kick me in the shin at the very worst. You know what I mean? So I could wipe out large swaths of them at one time with just a couple, roundhouse kicks to the face.
I wonder if PETA is aware that the NFL is advocating for violence against animals.
They play with a dead pig.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I don't believe that's actually made from a dead pig anymore.
I don't think it's actually made from a dead pig. No,
but
it'd be a lot cooler if it was.
Think about how much better the game would be if that's how you determined who got the ball first. Like,
just tossing a
who
pork
made it?
Around. Yeah.
Who was able to get out there, find the pigskin, create it, bladder up. This is going off the rails. So let's talk about Ohio State football, right? Because that's what this week's actually about. Right?
Yeah, right. Sorry. Where are we?
America, I'm trying to bring the dab back, and I need your help. So just be prepared. You're going to see a lot of this with Berm on this show coming up.
Are we? How much are we actually going to see of it?
All of it.
We've already seen it 2 more times than I thought we would.
I'm trying to get America to dive in. Well, because they don't want, they want to bring back the good old days when Ohio State was winning Big Ten championships and people were dabbing all over the place. And you can't tell me. Now, I want both of your opinions. Have you noticed that since the dab went away, Ohio State has not won a national championship or a Big Ten championship?
When was the dab actually
causation
prevalent?
Or correlation?
I don't want to say popular because I don't think that it was ever that.
I mean, like
when
3
was
years
it prevalent?
Ago, like 2019.
3 years ago.
2019.
No way.
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
I'm going to Google the dab.
They were dabbing in 2019, and I think it was longer ago than that.
I'm asking you, has Ohio State won a Big Ten championship since people stopped dabbing? Or a Big Ten championship?
Since 2015, dabbing has been used as a gesture of triumph or playfulness, becoming a youthful fad and internet meme.
Yeah, and
2015.
That's when it started. That's when it started, not when it ended. People stopped doing it in 2018, 2019. The last time.
You think that the dab era lasted 4 years? There's no chance of that.
I think you're underestimating the social impact of the dab.
Am I, Bill? I think I have it properly evaluated here.
I think the correlation between Ohio State's success on the field and the dab is nothing, non-existent,
shoddy at best. So, spring practice starts Tuesday, right?
That's correct.
We've talked about all the positions over the last month. What we get 30 minutes in there on Tuesday morning, which we'll talk about obviously more on Tuesdays daily. But what is the one position group that you guys don't say quarterback, not quarterback? What is the one spot where you're like, I want to watch this dude and see what he looks like?
Why are we not allowed to say quarterback?
Because I know that's what you'd say.
Well, I mean, we haven't seen Devin Brown like throw a football, so I'd like to see that.
Well, we did because we were at the Peach Bowl and he threw a beautiful 70-yard bomb to Keon Grays.
Yeah, but did anyone get video of it?
Well, we weren't allowed to video.
Yeah, we were allowed to.
No, we weren't. But no, I mean, obviously, everyone's going to say quarterback because that's the lowest common denominator here. So I'm trying to pull something out of you guys.
Yeah,
that's other than that position.
Okay, I will say the wide receivers. Sorry, Bill. No, as we've talked about, Marvin Harrison Jr. does not need to do anything in the spring. Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming will not, and we've talked a lot, certainly about in the position previews. What was holding back, what kept those freshman wide receivers from a year ago from taking that next step. And again, it was various things for all of them, but they still have now winter mat drills, conditioning, all that stuff under their belts. This is going to be a massive spring for them. And we didn't get to see them do a lot. They weren't on the field, so we couldn't certainly evaluate game reps. We don't get to see any practice once you get done with training camp. So they were largely a mystery. And so beyond, I guess it'll also be significant who's throwing them the football, but I'm not allowed to say that. But just how that class of wide receivers looks, because they're going to get a ton of reps. And Ohio State needs to throw the ball a lot in spring to help evaluate those quarterbacks. So that group, I think, is going to be really fascinating. The offense as a whole will have my attention because of the new pieces that are going to be out there, who's playing where on the offensive line. But I think getting a feel for that next wave of wide receivers will be something that I look at right away on Tuesday morning.
I'm doing these things for OhioStateRivals.com with a thought or two on every scholarship player, and I was finishing up the offense on Sunday, and it struck me like how weird it is that they have 12 scholarship receivers, and we know like next to nothing about 8 of them. Almost all of them outside of the returning starter. Like it's very odd to me that those second-year guys didn't play at all. And even Jaden Ballard has not played all that much for a guy who's going into his third year in the program. So they are very much a mystery. I'm interested in them as well. Offensive line, obviously, for me is the one spot. I am still on alert, I guess, to like show up to spring practice and Matthew Jones is playing center. Because the more I look at that group, the more I'm like, this is not all that good, because they don't have a guy who can play center, and I don't know if they have the other guy who can play tackle outside of Josh Fryer. So I think that group is much more of a question mark than Ryan Day sort of let on the last time we talked to him, when he was just sort of like, "Oh, we're good, we'll figure it out." I was like, I don't know. I think you can, but I am approaching that position group with a healthy amount of skepticism outside of the Donovan Jacksons and Matthew Jones and probably Josh Fryer.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that in talking to Luke Whippler in Indianapolis, he mentioned that he thought Jacob James would be the guy at center when he's back and healthy. But missing the entire spring when you've never been the starter before does not exactly, endear a lot of confidence in that sort of assumption. And I'm really interested to see what Vic Cutler looks like, because coming from a strength program at ULM where he's going to be completely different, by the time he takes the field for Ohio State in September than he is now. I want to see where he's got to get to and where his body is, because he has never worked out in a real college program. And on the other side of that, I want to see Jahad Carter and Davison Igbinosun and how those guys look, because the corner room and the safety room is getting put into a position where there's going to need to be someone new stepping up. And I think that if you just look at them, we're not going to see a lot on Tuesday, because we're going to have, they're going to be stretching, and then they're going to do a couple drills where we're going to watch it. So it's not like we're going to see them in, 11 on 11 situations or anything like that. But I just want to see how those guys look coming from programs that maybe didn't have the same emphasis as Ohio State did. Ole Miss, obviously, being a SEC program for Igbinosun, you figure he's going to be a little bit more physically ready than Carter coming from Syracuse, and Cutler from, down with the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana or Lafayette. I don't remember even which one he came from because they
They're the
don't even.
Warhawks.
So it was ULM. Okay.
He went to ULM.
I mean, it's all the same. It's all somewhere in Lafayette. And I think that is.
I think Louisiana Monroe
Don't
is in Monroe.
think that's how that works. The M does not stand for Lafayette.
Monroe and Lafayette are right next to each other in the state of Louisiana. Everyone knows that.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. I don't
exactly.
I don't know
no one knows, man. We're just making it up. No, but I think that's the important thing, really, that I'm looking at, because that offensive line is going to be a major question mark from now until April 15th and well beyond.
Austin dabbed and I blacked out.
Told you, we're bringing it back.
That was the only way I could get through that geography lesson. It was actually I was hitting myself in the head because I was puzzled by how Lafayette became Monroe.
I think
as the exact same place.
I think that's a perfect example of the fact that you haven't dabbed in a while and you forgot how to do it.
I don't think I ever did it.
No,
Hey, do you
go ahead, Bill? Sorry.
How big of a deal is it that at the moment, and this number could change when we talk to Ryan Day on Tuesday, but what we do know is going into Tuesday practice, they have 29 available defensive scholarship players.
Berman, I had the exact same reaction on Friday morning when you posted your 32 observations.
I thought you were just being
What?
lazy. I saw 32. I saw 32, and I was like, "Damn, Bill's just leaving 8 guys out." But nope, that's real. That's bad. And I'm actually bringing cleats to Columbus on Tuesday just in case we have to do something, because that's very, very low. And I don't know how it really got there, because it doesn't seem like there was this mass attrition at any one point. So it's just been slowly dwindling over the last couple of seasons. And you're missing some key guys, and obviously you're not going to see Eichenberg and those guys playing out there. So it's who's going to be where. So it's a big spring for guys. I mean, especially the linebacker position, I think. And of course, as we talked about, defensive end, Caden Curry is going to have to prove that he needs to be a every down guy. And I'm really interested, even though he's not going to be practicing again this spring, is Mitchell Melton. How does he fit into this? And I don't know how you can find that out this spring if he's not doing stuff.
Yeah, he's the biggest one of all the guys who are not going to be out. I think the 3 defensive players who are unavailable are Tommy and Court Williams, and then Mitchell Melton. And Mitchell Melton is the one that's a little unfortunate, because I think, as we talked about before, they very much want him to be the Jack, and then I think that sort of dismisses all the questions we have about Jack Sawyer and Caden Curry and CJ Hicks and all those guys, but we can't get that answer in the spring. So it's we'll watch them do stuff, and then in the back of your head, you think, well, what does it really mean? Because presumably Mitchell Melton will be back at some point.
I think it's pretty problematic. And I guess it didn't even really register as we were going through the position previews. We did talk about the lack of depth on the defensive line and what that may mean. But other spots were well, there's 4, 5, 6 corners that they can work in. There's a log jam at safety. You don't even have to think about linebacker, really, because by the fall, that Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg are going to be taking all those reps. So it doesn't even that number didn't sink in until you wrote about it on Friday. And I think about it now in the context of what they can actually accomplish in the spring, because that's basically just a 2 deep, a 2.5 deep. So it's not even that. It's not even that, because it's 29 players and 9 of them are safeties. Yeah, so exactly right. So a 1.5 to a 2.5 depth
and
chart.
5 are corners, or 6 are corners.
6.
So 15 of the
6,
29 available players. So 14 of the 29 available players are safeties and corners.
And so one thing that we had talked about after the last meeting with Ryan Day was that they wanted to do a lot more, game simulations and scrimmaging, because they're trying to evaluate the quarterbacks and take the next step. Well, you really can't do that if you have 29 healthy defensive players. There's a limit to how physically you can actually go out and be over those 15 workouts, because you're then 1 or 2 injuries away from having nobody to play a defensive end.
You can simulate the hell out of playing against the dime package, though. I mean, so I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, but the bigger concern I have is that if you have guys in the linebacker room, for example, that that you're like, man, there's a very good chance that one or two guys leaves after spring because there is no real path to playing time. That number is going to shrink even more as you head into the summer. So that's shocking.
They are awaiting the arrival of a couple of incoming freshmen, but they're not waiting for 10.
Yeah.
I think they're waiting for like 4. If I remember off the top of my head, it's not a very large number. There is because the offensive side of this is going to run on Monday. There are 43 offensive players and 2 more coming in the summer. There is a serious imbalance on this roster between offensive and defensive players.
When we already knew that was the case in terms of like productivity, right? I mean, the offense has been much better for the last couple of years, and the recruiting rankings have reflected an emphasis on the offensive side. But even if they weren't getting 5 stars or high 4 stars consistently on defense, you still should have been signing somebody.
Yeah.
And you look at that donut that they got on the defensive line in this last class, and you're like, well, there you go. That's how you wind up with 29 guys playing in spring. Like that should, Ryan Day should be seeing that out of everything else and being like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
What has caused that? And what can be done to correct?
Well, what's interesting is that they signed 4 defensive linemen in the class, 3 defensive tackles, and 1 edge rusher. And only one of them enroll early. You have 55% of the class enrolls early, but only one of those guys do, and that's Will Smith, who's from.
Sorry, I did mean defensive ends.
So Will Smith, who's from just 5 minutes down the road. So the value that you could have by having Caden McDonald and Jason Mora on campus right now would be huge for both of them, but those guys couldn't enroll early. So it's just this very weird sort of black hole at the moment of like, oh, how did this come to this point? And I don't know how you get through the spring with that many guys on defense, to be honest. It's almost like you're in December and you're getting ready to go play in a bowl game that doesn't matter and everyone transferred out of your program. Like there are teams playing in bowl games with more players than that. So I don't know how that gets there.
Which when we go at the practice on Tuesday, which non-defensive players are going to surprise us by wearing a defensive jersey?
Kate Stover.
Yes, Chip Trainum.
I feel terrible for Kate Stover, Xavier Johnson, and Chip Trainum. Like those poor guys just keep getting.
Jake Seibert. Yeah, he's back.
Unbelievable.
Now.
Jake Seibert's going to have to play defensive end.
I mean, you could put like Sam Hart or someone out there, Bennett Christian. Who knows? I mean, it is.
Stay tuned to our next daily where we talk about whether or not Jake Seibert can play the jack.
He does not fit the profile.
It's called the Jake. Okay.
My God, this is a regular comedy hour today. I love it. We've really we got a second dab on the board. This is
bringing it back. You already expanded the gospel of the dab to me.
So much better than I anticipated. So much better.
It's a lot safer too when I'm doing it here and not next to you when you're driving in the car and you're hitting me in the face with the extended arm. That had me a little. I didn't really want to bring it back at that point. I was kind of annoyed.
It was dry out. There was no wind. It was fine. The other position I'm really interested in heading into Tuesday and Thursday, and as we get then Ohio State's on spring break, so it's a little primer and then a break, but is running back. Like that's going to be very interesting to me to see how they manage this, because I don't know how much you really want to work Mayan Williams this spring, but really if you don't, then you only have Dallin Hayden and Chip Trainum available because everyone else is injured still, with Evan Pryor not being ready to go, with Travion Henderson not being ready to go, with TC Caffey not being ready to go. That's a really interesting spot for Tony Alford to be in, because you're going to have to decide, like with Mayan, you don't want to push him because you don't need to, but what do you do there? And is this spring turn into really just 7-on-7 for Ohio State?
That's what I was going to say. You look at the numbers out there on defense, and this is probably just going to be a lot more 7-on-7 situations. I don't think you can go do a bunch of inside drill and 9-on-7 and run the football, because like that's going to stretch those two. The running back unit and the defensive line are both already thin. Like, what are you going to go do? Like bang some helmets?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they can do that. It's kind of weird that we went through this whole month and a half and talking about getting ready for spring ball and position previews, and it didn't dawn on us until now that like maybe they won't actually be able to practice football the way they're talking about.
See, we've been bitching and moaning for months about wanting 7-on-7 in Ohio, and now we got it. Worked out perfect.
Oh, man.
You're welcome, Bobby Carpenter.
Seems really good for a team that like struggled to tackle on the perimeter and couldn't run the ball on 3rd and 1 to just have a spring where they don't do any of that because they don't have enough guys to practice it.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this super uplifting episode of the podcast daily.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. I can't wait.
I mean, it is that. I have a different line of questioning now for Ryan Day that I didn't anticipate for Tuesday. I think that's good. That part is an interesting dynamic because they talked about all of last year is trying to be tougher and winning the line of scrimmage. And like, as Bill said, if you don't get to actually do that as much as you want in the spring, or if you feel like you still have to, like, what is that list of wounded players going to look like by the end of camp? Like, it's unavoidable. It's a game of football. It's physical. If that's the choice that you make, which is again what they did in September of last year, like continuing to practice really hard on Tuesday and Wednesday to bring something out of them. Well, that was why they had a lot of guys who wound up on the unavailability report on Saturday. Like, that's the cost of doing business that way.
It's going to be fun.
Maybe the spring game that we played in like those bubble suits the guys wear at halftime of the games when like Brutus runs people over.
Knocker ball?
What are those
knocker
called?
Ball or something?
Knocker ball. Knocker. The spring game's going to be knocker ball.
I would love to see Devin Brown and Kyle McCord try to throw wearing those things, though. That'd be worth it.
That would be just like the old Bud Bowls during Super Bowl. The bottles throwing the football off it.
That'd be amazing. Folks, we are not going to be at Roosters on Olentangy River Road on Monday. We're going to hold that until Tuesday so we can actually talk about Ohio State spring football kickoff. So if you're planning on being there on Monday, don't be there Tuesday afternoon. What time do we say? 2? Is that what time we're talking?
Not sure that we nailed down a time yet because we will be in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center all Monday morning. First practice of spring, then interview session with Ryan Day, and then Jim Knowles as well. Do I have that right? Handful of players
and Heartline
to kick it off. So
was it Heartline and
Knowles? So a massive amount of coverage coming on Tuesday and then Thursday as well. Can't wait for that as we get rolling. Again, here on the podcast and at ohiostate.rivals.com with the official start of spring ball. For Berm and Bill, I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you tomorrow.